What's going on? Maurice Barker here. We got a lot of information to go through today. So first, let's address what's going on now. COVID-19. So with this report that we did, we won't get a chance to see how COVID did a number on these companies, right? Because we're analyzing the financials up until the point of 2019, which is the most recent. But unemployment is high. Businesses are being shut down. Business might not even be able to open up. And especially in Houston, we're built on entrepreneurship, small businesses, right? Small businesses are looking for grants, opportunities to just stay afloat. And that's going to show on their financial reporting. And we won't be able to see that, but you can almost kind of project it on what's going on, especially if you get a good look into what they used to do and how they used to perform. But I was lucky to pick two companies that this might not have affected at all. Why? Because they're in the health industry. And with the health industry, especially medical in particular, it's certain things that have to be sold. It's certain products that people just need. And for my two companies, I have Res Medical and I have Dexcom. So what these two companies do are they have a niche base. So the good thing about a niche base is you serve to a certain audience. And this certain audience, they need your product. And when they have a need for your product, you can price it however you want. Of course, you can't monopolize the market, but that's for a whole nother discussion. But I do have Res Medical and I have Dexcom. So let's go through it a little bit. Okay, so two companies, both based in San Diego, California, and they were founded 10 years apart, 189 and 199. So Res Medical is, of course, based in San Diego, California, founded in 1989, so 10 years before Dexcom, by Peter Farrell. And they specialize in equipment specifically for sleep issues, so things like sleep apnea. They create devices that help kind of override those issues. Now, keep in mind, it's as close to authentic as possible that these people that go through these problems are going to get the best sleep, and they rely on these machines. And since they do rely on these machines, the Res Med, they created a market to where these people need this product. Now let's see, you got Res Med. Now let's go to Dexcom. So Dexcom is a health company, and they are based in San Diego as well. And they were founded 10 years after Res Med in 1999. And Res Med was founded by one person, and Dexcom was founded by a group of people. We got Scott Glenn, John Bird, Lauren Artsuki, Ellen Preston, and Brett McGargle. And that's about 5 to 6 people. And they sell glucose monitoring systems for people with diabetes. So typically you see people with diabetes, they have to prick their finger, draw the blood. Well, they created a system where they don't have to go through the constant process of pricking their finger and drawing blood. They have a little chip that constantly monitors their system, and you insert the chip like right under the top layer of your skin, so it doesn't do any harm to you, but at the same time you don't have to go through the process of pricking your finger every time. Now keep in mind, just think about this device and for what it does. Think about how niche based it is for the people that have diabetes, right? Because in our country, we're big on obesity, diabetes. They say 1 out of 10 people are diabetic and 1 out of 3 are pre-diabetic. So with that being said, Dexcom is going to always have a market. And even though they don't prey upon it, but their market is geared toward people with illnesses and sicknesses. And in America, we have an old population. So with that being said, these people, they're going to have their ailments, their illnesses. It's just inevitable. And Dexcom is able to provide a solution to a problem, which keeps you in business. Alrighty. So let's take a look at the financial ratios, right? So financial ratios are used to just see how the company is performing. So normally performance doesn't matter unless you have something to compare it to. So the financial ratios, we have these metrics that allow us to see, okay, how the company is performing now, how it used to perform, and it allows financial analysts and planners to project on how it'll perform in the future. And it allows you to see how you perform amongst your competitors, which creates a market value. So you can you have a stick to where you know, okay, am I doing well? Am I doing poorly? And am I going to be able to stay in business? Ultimately, these are the questions that these financial ratios ask. So we got the 5 groups. We got efficiency, we got liquidity, we got leverage, and we got profitability ratios. So with the liquidity ratio, we're looking at current, and current shows your company's ability to handle short-term debt. And let's see, so the market average for the sector that ResMed and Dexcom are in is 2.53. And we have ResMed sitting at 2.6 and Dexcom sitting at 5.47. So both these companies show that they can have the ability to handle short-term debt. Now, Dexcom exceeds the market average by a lot, meaning they are well equipped, and they have that advantage over ResMed. But they both have the capability because they both over average. It's just Dexcom exceeds the standard. All right, now let's take a look at a leverage ratio. So with the leverage ratios, take a look at this. So it basically gives you the amount of money that it shows the amount of money that comes from debt. Now, a lot of times we hear debt. People think debt is bad, but remember, a lot of times it's good to be able to get resources without having to spend your money. It gives you the opportunity to create extra cash flow, bring in more capital if you do it right. But if you have too much debt, you can find yourself in a bad position. So it's always that sweet spot or the point of diminishing returns. You got to kind of thread the needle. All right, so the average debt ratio for the market is about 0.49. And with that being said, that's basically how much of your company is financed by debt. So you look at normally your assets, and if you use those assets right, if you finance debt right, you can create opportunity for more cash flow, more capital in return, brings you more revenue and more sales. Okay, so the market is 0.49, almost half, and ResMed sits at 0.48, so they're about average, and Dexcom sits at about 0.63. Now, keep in mind, certain markets have a certain amount of debt. Well, let me reword that. It's gonna be different towards the market, right? And some sectors, a lot of the companies are more financed by debt. So if you hold one sector's ratios to another, it might not go well, but you have to understand the makeup and the product that they're serving. It's way more that ties into it than just the number. But as far as the market, for market purposes, ResMed and Dexcom are sitting almost around average. So what they're basically doing is they're efficient in leveraging their debt. And let's take a look at the couple of charts. Put this right here. Okay, so we got the gray represents ResMed, the orange represents Dexcom, and the blue represents the market. So as you can see, the market is at about 0.6. ResMed is a little over, and Dexcom is blowing them out the water. And we look at, that's debt to equity. Now debt, we look at Dexcom at 0.6, and market and ResMed, their numbers are almost hard to eyeball, but for the most part, everybody's around the same average. Alrighty. Let's see. All right, next we got profitability ratios, and this basically shows your company's ability to bring in money. And this right here is not the end all be all, but it's definitely a good indicator. So we got the net profit margin, which shows how much money you bring in after all dues are paid. So this is the number, right? And the average net profit margin for the industry is about negative 4.8. Now, negative numbers, you got to remember, everything is subjective, or let's look at it in it's relative to your industry. There we go. So ResMed sits at a net profit margin at about 16.3%, and I told you the market was at negative 4.8. So that lets you know how lucrative ResMed is and what they're doing. Now, keep in mind, as the illnesses and diabetes sicknesses has increased over the years, you're going to see that these kind of companies get more and more profitable every year. Now, they hit points of stagnation, but they're going to continue to profit and get more profit. Now, let's look at Dexcom is sitting at 6.8%. Now, compared to ResMed and how they're performing, you would think that Dexcom's not doing too well, but keep in mind that market is sitting at negative 4.8%. So Dexcom, that lets you know they're bringing in profit. And keep in mind, this is after all dues paid. So this is all hands on deck. And let's take a look at the profits. So like you see right here, the blue is the market, and both Dexcom and ResMed are outperforming the market. Now keep in mind, these are billion-dollar companies, and they're both super lucrative. So in any area that you see that they lack, just know that they pick up in another area in a big way. Okay, so let's talk about financial planning, right? We talk about ratios. Now, the thing about ratios, they show what's going on in the present, or they show you what used to happen, and all this is used so you can almost forecast the future. So you won't make bad decisions, and ultimately, every day you stay in business is a good day, right? So financial planning creates those numbers. You have to create systems that allow you to be a profitable company. You have to always stay abreast to what's going on. So I'll give you an example with COVID-19. These two companies, ResMed and Dexcom, they were asked to expand in what they do since they were already in the health industry. And keep in mind, they're real niche based. So the services and goods that they make are designed for a very particular audience. But they were called on upon the government, just as of recently, to make extra equipment to support the hospitals. Now keep in mind, this is a lot to ask on a company. They have to be able to accommodate for the request that's made, but they were able to make those accommodations. Now keep in mind, these are both profitable business, so they're able to adapt well. Now the thing is, when they did fulfill this request, their numbers shot up. Revenue shot up 37%, and this was for ResMed, and Dexcom was around 47%, but keep in mind, they both shot up. And that lets you know, not only did they get the opportunity to make more money, but now, since they fulfilled that request, it gave them the ability to create. They got opportunity now to think outside the box and expand in what they do, bringing in more money. And keep in mind, these companies are already profitable. So a big saying with ResMed is they're competing with ignorance. All right, so let's look at inventory and accounts receivable management. So the accounts receivable is when the customer gets their desired product, but it's not paid for yet, right? And then you have day sale outstanding, where it shows how long it takes to get the money after the sale. Now, if you have this in line, it'll create that cash flow consistent. You don't want either one of these numbers to be off. So in turn, you have an inventory going down. That means a lower overhead, but you have to have that inventory turnover. So you have to restock, and you have to be able to, when you restock, you have to be able to meet the demand and know how to price it in a way that it's still, you still getting profit from it. Now keep in mind, they have a real niche based audience, so they have the ability, they know for a fact it's going to sell, because it's not like this is a want. People need the items that these two companies produce. Alrighty. So let's, and then we have credit and accounts payable management. So accounts management refers to how a company goes about handling its credit line. Now, okay, so when you establish a credit line with these two companies, you establish a credit line. If I can get the resource and then pay later, I can create more cash flow. I can use that resource that I have now that I'm paying on to create more income, to drive more revenue, to bring in more cash flow. And that in turn establishes credit as well. So with Dexcom and ResMed, they're both in good credit positions. So it allows them to be more lucrative. It allows them to get more hands on resources within the time that they need, and this helps them be able to be more productive. It brings in more profit. They're able to act now instead of later, and good credit positions will establish that for you, and in turn you build a system and you're flowing. All right. And so liquidity management, this is very, very important. And these are the numbers that we went over early with the current, the debt, the profit margins. These numbers have to be managed. They have to constantly be managed. So right now we just look at yearly reports, but we have quarterly reports, we have day reports. Just like they keep up with the stock market, this stuff is important because these numbers basically forecast your future. You look at these numbers to not only predict what's going to happen later on, but it allows you to make the necessary adjustments so you can kind of tweak what happens later on, right? So the liquidity management is basically your ability to have cash or sufficient cash while going through your process of borrowing or investing in the short term. And without the proper management of these ratios, your company won't stay afloat. And in turn, every day that you can stay in business is a great day. Okay, so to conclude with ResMed and Dexcom, even though they're competitors, they're both thriving companies in the sense that they both have the ability to, just like as of now, they're being asked in the COVID-19 situation to help supply the supplies that's necessary for doctors to do what they need to do. But outside of this pandemic and what's going on, ResMed and Dexcom, they have two niche-based audiences that they serve, and the equipment that they provide, being the glucose monitor or the sleep machines, these are not something that's wants. These are needs. These are things that could mean life or death. You know, with diabetes, keep in mind, it's going up. Pre-diabetic, 1 in 10. In turn, 2 out of 13. And then we look at the obesity rate going up, and obesity rate with the clogging of your arteries makes for bad sleep, and that's where Dexcom come in and help you with the sleep apnea. So what they do is Dexcom provides a superficial source in helping you go about living your day-to-day life as good as possible. While ResMed, they provide you with something that literally, if you can't keep control of, you can die. So both these companies are both billion-dollar companies, and they both saw revenue increase around 30 to 40% just with the pandemic going on. But to forecast the future, especially the way they've been adapting and the way they've been expanding, they both want to help you without you having to be there. So it's almost like automating the process. And with that in turn, once they figure out that system and it's in the works, it's going to create more profit for the company. It's going to allow them to outsource a lot more. They already have both alone have great credit lines, so they have the ability to get their hands on the resources needed to create this new wave that they're going for. And in turn, we have $2 billion companies that's continuing to thrive in the health industry, which in this point in time right now is pivotal, and both of these companies are on their way up.